The local exchange is still trading in negative territory this afternoon at the back of Chinese regulations on tech firms. Naspers is dragging the bourse lower after Chinese officials told Tencent to end its focus on profit in gaming. Gary Booysen, who is portfolio manager at Rand Swiss, joins us now to talk through these and other business-related stories. Mr. Booysen, welcome to the Daytime Update. Could you take us through the factors that are driving the local bourse lower today?
Absolutely. As you mentioned, I think Naspers is a big culprit. So we've got Naspers down over 7% at the moment. As you mentioned, they were actually called in front of Chinese regulators to just, I suppose, notify them that they're going to be stepping up supervision and monitoring of online gaming. So you'll remember, a couple of months ago, they came out with the idea that Chinese children should only be allowed to play games for 1 hour per day between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. They're now going to monitor it and enforce it, and of course that sent all sorts of nerves through the market. They also mentioned that there were going to be further restrictions on gaming promotion, celebrity endorsements, live broadcasts, and a host of other restrictions. So that really did spook the market. But it's not just Naspers that's pulling our market lower. We've got the likes of MTN down almost 4%. We've got Anglo-American Platinum down around 3.7%. It's coming through from the resources. They're down over 1% in total. It's coming from the financials as well. And overall, the all-share index is down about about 2.3% at the moment. This also comes from just a slightly weaker close on the S&P 500 last night. So, and that's just basically on international growth factors. So everything kind of conspiring against us today to create a fairly red market in South Africa.
You mentioned Naspers there in your answer. We see that their shares have crashed 8% so far today. What are the dynamics regarding that development?
Yeah, so as I said, Naspers really, Naspers is essentially a holding company for a big investment in Tencent. Tencent, obviously, the gaming company in China. So in the past, it was such a significant portion of our index. Whenever you saw any sort of move on Naspers, that fed through to the index. But obviously, with the reweighting that we saw in the last couple of weeks, where the actual component of Naspers is much smaller than the index, it's not as important as it used to be, but still obviously critical to the general performance of the market. So as I mentioned, really the Chinese regulators attacking Tencent, that then feeding through into their holding companies, which are Prosus and Naspers. And as Tencent shares fell in Asia this morning, so Naspers and Prosus shares have to fall on our market today, just because of the way the sum of the parts model works.
Now, Steinhoff's final settlement vote has been postponed. Give us some details about the settlement vote and the reasons behind this postponement.
Yeah, so the reasons behind the postponement are very unclear at this stage. Remember that this is an incredibly complex matter that we're dealing with. So remember, there's over 100 legal claims against Steinhoff after the fraud that we saw, a couple of years ago. The claims amount to something like 130 billion rand, which is far in excess of Steinhoff's market cap. And there's all sorts of different parties involved here, trying to make sure that the operating businesses underneath are preserved and some value is at least released from them. Obviously, the management team at Steinhoff currently is trying to list a lot of these operational businesses to allow them to at least generate some value that can be accrued to the shareholders that have been so hurt. At the same time, the shareholding in Steinhoff has changed as well. A lot of distressed hedge funds have come in, and they specialize in buying up securities that are in companies that are in trouble. They then kind of agitate and try and get the court rulings done in their favor. You've got, for example, the owners of Techie Town that traded their business for what are essentially now worthless Steinhoff shares. They're also applying to have Steinhoff liquidated. So it's an incredibly complex matter. And the postponement today, they reached out to Christopher Visa asking why he didn't essentially vote today. He was supposedly going to vote at 11 o'clock today. He didn't make any comments. So we don't know why it was postponed, but just remember, this is an incredibly complex legal matter. So for anyone that is speculating in Steinhoff shares at this stage, It's a matter of, if you don't understand the kind of legal arguments being made and the very complex dynamics of the legal battle that's going on, the chances of understanding what value is going to be released in Steinhoff are very, very low. As I said, if the entirety of those 130 billion in claims had to be paid out, Steinhoff would essentially be liquidated and the shares would go to zero. But at this stage, all the parties concerned are trying to come to some sort of agreement in which some shareholder value is preserved.
Now, South Africa's current account balance has widened to its largest surplus ever at 343 billion rand for the second quarter. Talk us through that data.
So I think it's not really a surprise. It was the slight surprise on the consensus expectations, but we haven't really seen it feeding through to the currency where you really would expect to see the financial impact of that kind of number playing out. And that just tells me that most of this was expected by financial markets. Of course, we've already had rocketing commodity prices, which would have helped any South African exports to chalk up much higher values than previously. And one of the comments around the number has been that obviously the current account surplus that we're seeing at the moment is really driven by higher prices rather than higher volumes. It's not that we're exporting more items. The items that we're exporting, we're just getting better prices for them. And this is really coming down to higher commodity prices, which is obviously a key exporter for us, but also just inflation in the developed markets, which are our customers. So things that we make in South Africa, we are able to sell for more overseas, which is obviously assisting with that very, very pleasing current account number today.
Certainly, any bit of good news is very much welcome. Thank you very much, Mr. Booysen, for today's market update. That's Gary Booysen, his portfolio manager at Rand Swiss.